used the packet out late on Friday, didn't you?
I did. They wanted to make sure some information was in there. And then it took
But
me
you
a
made it
while.
by
It
5.
took me a while to read through it, so.
Yeah, well, you didn't get a chance to read it again.
Yep. We were waiting for quota information, I think, right?
That was, and then.
Yeah.
Mostly the phone.
Good, how are you? I'm pretty
I
good.
was surprised how,
Hey, Tom.
usually
You guys all
Northern
good?
reports that like Thursday
Things are
morning.
good.
10 o'clock.
Yeah.
They didn't put it on their website till late Friday night. We had to-
Interesting.
Wasn't it in the paper Friday?
Well, the Friday night paper edition.
I thought it was in Friday morning paper. Maybe it was Saturday morning, I don't know. It was in the paper,
Yeah, it was in the paper, but I don't think it was till Saturday.
perhaps.
Because I checked Northern's website 2 or 3 times. All the papers, none of the papers, it was fine.
Well, are you happy with it?
Yeah, I mean, it works good for us.
Yeah.
We needed a tiny bit higher one, you know, it won't hurt us to have 70% this year, so.
That's kind of the norm, isn't it?
I was gonna say, that's the way it's been for.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's kind of what we expected.
It's kind of, they don't go a whole lot higher than that, do they? They don't go a whole lot higher than that, do
we
they?
like to be
Not
trained.
very often. Last year, you know, occasionally they'll do
Okay.
70% this month and then like a 10% in June, supplemental quota. But, yeah, it seems like
Did they do that last year when it was so wet?
they did it
Yeah.
at 80%.
Okay, it's 3 o'clock, gang. Call the meeting to order. I'll do roll call.
Tom Duster,
Here.
Scott Holwick,
Here.
Roger Lang,
Here.
Renee Davis,
Here.
Dan Wolford,
Here.
Ken Houston,
Here.
Wes Lowry,
Here.
Kevin Bowden,
Here.
Hope Bartlett, here, Alex Merkline,
Here.
Chris Huffer,
Here.
Heather McIntyre is here, and Councilmember Martin is not here yet. Chair, you have a quorum.
All right, very good. Let's talk about approval of previous month's minutes. Anybody got any comments or questions about last month's minutes? If not, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, moved and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Kevin?
Yeah, flow this morning at Lyons was 143 CFS. The 125-year historic average is approximately 76 CFS for the state. The call on the St. Vrain is Lake McIntosh, and that has a priority date of 1902. And the call on the South Platte River is Bijou Canal, and that's a priority date of 2004. Ralph Price Reservoir at Button Rock is at an elevation of 6388, which is approximately 12 feet from full, or approximately 13,683 acre feet, which is down approximately 2,500 acre feet from full. Union Reservoir is currently at a gauge height of 24.7 feet, or 10,419 acre feet, which is down 2,300 acre feet from full. Reservoirs at the end of March were at 76% of full, and which is a little bit higher than last year, about 10% higher than we were last year at this time. So, and for snowpack, I will let Alex talk about that. He's got a presentation for you.
Okay. Before you go, Alec, anybody have any comments? Kevin, questions? All right, go ahead, Alec.
We're doing it later in the.
You'll do it during the drought report.
Oh, all right, fine, all right. Okay. Any public invited to be heard today? Agenda revisions. I got a request that we take item 8B and put that at the end of minutes, so we don't shove people like Hope to the end and she doesn't get on, so we're gonna take a little time on that, I'm sure, so if that's all right, can we hold that to the end of the minutes, I mean, the agenda? Very good, thank you. Development activity, Russ, is that yours?
Yeah. So you have one development activity that seeks your action. It's on Irwin Thomas conveyance plat. That's a 32.875 acre parcel located south of Colorado State Highway 119, west of North 119th Street. So straight south of the Costco. Historic water rights were transferred at time of annexation. That transfer satisfied the direct flow up to 1 acre foot per acre in storage. So therefore, Irwin Thomas conveyance plat will be in compliance with the city's raw water requirement policy upon satisfaction of the 32.875 acre foot deficit at time of conveyance plat approval. Any questions I can attempt to answer?
Is this the property that came in with the Costco property? I mean, is that part of that package that we approved?
It's not part of the plat, it's not part of that plat package. This would be south of that. This is a completely separate piece. So the
Okay.
last time you seen this land in front of you was part of the annexation, when it was annexed under Irwin Thomas annexation number 1.
Okay,
So,
I was just kind of curious.
yeah.
I'm trying to piece in where Costco, I guess Costco's
Yeah.
north of that, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah, this entire parcel was the Irwin Thomas annexation, and then Costco platted right up here. And then this is just south. Costco, and there was a
I keep thinking of the Golden property, is it?
yeah, it was all part of
Yeah.
Golden Companies.
Okay, all right.
and again, the conveyance plat doesn't allow for the development of the property. They'll come through with a separate final plat at some point in the future. This is just to create an opportunity for them to convey land. Yeah.
So just out of interest more than anything else, is there some rounding going on, or just, so is 34, is one share of the bonus ditch company, is that an acre foot?
So that was the water that was transferred at historic. We applied a credit for those 34 shares towards the entire annexation, and that credit satisfied the not less than 2 acre foot per acre required for the direct flow. So the 34 directly doesn't tie any way whatsoever to the 32.875. Those are separate. It was after that 34 was applied that it left a 1 acre foot per acre, and that's why we have the 32.875 acre foot that they need to satisfy in the storage.
But presumably the 34 shares is worth, let's say, something more than 2 times 32.
Yes, because the
acre-
annexation was much bigger than that.
Yeah.
I don't recall off the top of my head how big that annexation
Okay.
was.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to move this item forward?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moving second, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll take, I don't know, why don't we take this, yeah, we'll just take this item A, and then we'll skip from there, is that all right? Yeah, all right. Is this you, Alex?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Hi. Good evening. I hope my face is becoming a little more familiar to you all, even though this is only my 3rd meeting here. But so this year I was tasked with updating the city's water supply and water shortage implementation plan for this year and then the early part of 2025. So as many of you might know, the purpose of this plan is to manage the city's water and to try and anticipate, identify, and respond to water shortage that the city might encounter. Currently, the conditions we are seeing is around 143% of projected demand for 2024. The snowpack, stream flow, and storage for the St. Vrain Basin is around average. And our 2025 and 2026 projections are above the trigger points for an increased drought action level. which essentially indicates that Longmont wouldn't need to change from a sustainable conservation level in the future. But of course, that can always change as climatic variability can also change. The city finished the 2023 irrigation season with our local reservoirs at around 86% capacity, and our current projections show that by July 15th, the local reservoirs will be around 96% full. So the current level of drought, we are suggesting that the board keep it at a sustainable conservation level, which will pretty much mean continuing everything that we did last year into the next year. The evaluation of the relevant data, we recommend that we remain at a sustainable conservation level. Here's a graph of the snow water equivalent for the South Platte River Basin. We're just above the median currently, the median. And as of April 11th, we are at 105% of median for the South Platte, and for the Colorado River Basin, we are at about 106% of median. Here is also a map from the U.S. Drought Monitor of current drought conditions, and we are looking pretty good for this time. Of course, that's always a condition that can change, and I will continue to monitor and try and maintain up-to-date records in terms of trying to evaluate what Longmont's drought conditions should be. Factors that could maybe possibly change Longmont's outlook, an increase in Longmont customer water use over what we had projected, a significant reduction in late summer precipitation, significantly abnormal runoff, and major fire could also prove pretty disruptive. I was at CSU when the Cameron Peak fire happened, and that can be incredibly disturbing.
Quick question on the, can you go back on?
Yeah.
Significantly abnormal runoff, you mean less than we are proposing? Abnormally low or abnormally high you're talking about, runoff?
It could be either. I would figure less runoff would probably be more drastic change to the drought level.
You don't see that though? It doesn't look like that?
No.
Okay,
No.
I'm just curious. Okay, thanks.
Do we do any soil moisture monitoring in the Seaford watershed to check for
Not beyond what
runoff
the
viability?
NRCS reports. We don't do any of our own.
Alex, on the previous slide, I think, or two, we talked about a 10% reduction in water use for all city uses. Is that 10% over the 23 year, or is there a benchmark and we're going to try to maintain 10% less than that benchmark? I mean, obviously, if year after year after year, you can do 10%, and then we're struggling. Or we're to the point where now we're in trouble, or we're not meeting. So what is that number?
It's not a,
We're all looking at each other.
Guys, who wants to answer?
What do we mean?
You are on the right
Yeah.
so our overall goal is to reduce all of our city water use by about 10% over. If you want to really say it's back to our 2002 drought and what were we using before that? It's more site specific. You know, we're obviously not going to reduce every year 10%, but we've done a number of, as well as our Parks Department has, our golf courses, everybody in the cities have worked towards keeping, not increasing water use for the same amount of use or land. And it's really just keeping that one
Mindset.
conservation mantra
Mhm.
in this organization.
I'm sorry I came in late, but this is city with a capital means not the whole population, this means municipal uses.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, as I think as Hope will show later, we're already well below kind of let's say whatever the benchmark that you cited, 2012 or 2022.
2002.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, again, it's just kind of like a recognition that the city is trying their hardest to find reductions wherever they can. It's this difference between just kind of general conservation and kind of benchmarking, right? It's like
Yeah.
just
And
conservation, just looking for.
to give the citizens some credit, we are at about that. If you go by gallons per capita day,
Per capita, yeah,
you know, we are down,
yeah.
you know, about that 10%, which was always our goal, to get there, both in city use and citizen use.
So Ken, if you go back to '02, there was 10 facilities in the city that utilized water, operating golf courses, operating parks, right? And from then till now, we've added additional facilities that use water, so you have to consistently adjust for increased use, but on a decreased per unit basis, right?
Yes.
So you keep track of that on some level, I mean, because it's, going back to '02, you don't have the exact same things now that you do in '02.
Yeah.
It's expanded, we have more facilities, we have more.
I think that's what Ken was saying, it was to not really site specific, there was probably some areas that may have not reduced
Sure.
in that period of
Yeah.
time, so I think that the goal of
As a
that
collective.
comment was to say, we're gonna set the standard. We're gonna be the ones that the citizens can follow, so
Yeah.
we're gonna, when and where it's practical, we're gonna try to do those things that get the best conservation first, and then continue to look at other ways to keep making water conservation.
And on Hope's report, she has that information for you. We'll get there later today.
So the other side of that is, as the advisory, sustainability advisory board came up with, was it a recommendation for a 30% reduction like 3 or 4 years ago?
That wasn't the Sustainability Advisory Board, it was a Climate Action Task Force that City Council
Came up with
commissioned.
that, and how is that based on what we have here? I mean, who makes those decisions?
If you don't mind, I was on the
I would
task
love-
force, and we had, in the water group, there were just some real fanatics, and it was not based on data at all. They just went, yeah, we need
They
to
grabbed that
save
number and-
water, and, you know, I had no idea where our watersheds were, or anything, you know, so they had this fantasy that it was all gonna go back into the Colorado. So, yeah, it was based on nothing.
Okay.
And you guys rejected it, and Sustainability Advisory Board rejected it, and everybody with a say rejected it, so we didn't adopt it.
Okay.
I did have a quick question on the no surplus water declaration. What's the implication for that? I mean, it sounds like it was how we have been lately, but does that affect leases or anything?
Not for our 1 year that we've already have set up, and not for our long term.
Okay.
It'd be for people that are coming in front of us. At this point, we're saying we don't have any additional water that we're willing to lease out. Now, over time, because we're very conservative. We want to, since we don't know how much the people are going to use, we're going to make sure that we have enough. And so if you went back in history, we used to do our surplus water through the St. Bernard Left-Hand Water Conservancy District.
Okay.
Very labor-intensive effort. We used to do it in-house, which was even
You love it.
worse. And so now we consider our surplus water rental, the water that we carried over,
Okay.
that we were unable to take use of this year. So you have a maximum of 10% that you can carry over. So we carried over, I don't remember the exact percentage, let's just call it 14%. So that difference went over into what would be available for the regional pool. So our surplus essentially is going through the regional pool program administered through the Northern Water District.
Got it. Okay.
But no water releases beyond that, no water rental beyond that.
We still get a lot of calls on surplus water, just asking for agricultural water.
Okay.
So,
I got the feeling that this was similar to last year, but how long, when you say back in the history of, can you give me a time frame of when we were leasing this water and when we stopped?
Probably prior to the war.
And
Yeah, it was prior to Slack, yeah, you guys
It's
stopped.
definitely been in the last, over a decade,
That you haven't been leasing it?
not beyond the regional pool.
Okay.
But we trained people before that to call us, and now we still get those
Still
calls.
calling
We did a good job training.
So,
You're doing a good job training for the next 10 years. Okay.
Other questions for Alex? Just a quick question. When's the last time we've been other than sustainable level? Does it go back a long time? Or-
12,
maybe?
15.
It's at least, it might have even, for some reason, I'm thinking it's even longer than that. We went, I know in 2003, we did, for a short period of time, 2002 and 3.
Yeah,
There was
that
one
was-
other
yeah.
period.
It's always been sustainable in the.
It has
10
been,
years
and I
that
think
I've
it's been
on
a
board.
testament to the citizens doing their conservation and everyone in the water department, staff and water board, making sure that we always have a good, strong, reliable supply.
And was there something declared around the flood? But that was shorter term.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's why we said about 2013, I think we did that.
Okay. Yeah, 2002 was kind of a dry year, wasn't it?
Kind of.
Okay, no further questions? I guess we're looking for a recommendation to City Council to approve the proposal of Alex's that saying that we're going to keep our sustainable conservation level as is going into this year. So,
I move that we recommend that to the city council.
okay, second?
Second.
Okay, moving second, all in favor, say aye. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Alex.
So maybe one more question that doesn't have any bearing on the vote, but so if we wanted to kind of like think about additional kind of sustainability factors or something, operating within that definition or that, those guidelines that are present for the sustainable kind of designation, would that be a place where that type of work could be done? You know, so like, for example, if you, I mean, just out of just general kind of best management practices, kind of water conservation, water sustainability, like changing some of those bullet points might be a place where that type of work could be done.
Absolutely.
I think that's true.
Yep.
Yeah, and I have to give Water Board a lot of credit. When we first developed our drought planning processes, we just said, I can't remember what we call it, just no designation, and Water Board told us, you really need to think about, you should always be sustainable with your
Right.
water supply. So that's really how we came up with the sustainable water conservation level, is to always have that out there. So yeah, that's a good point, Tom. That's exactly why we did that.
Okay, so we're gonna carry 8B to the end of the meeting or later on, so 9A, legislative report, Ken?
Yes, we really just gave you a quick list of some of the bills that are sitting on the down at the legislature. We really don't have a lot, aren't asking for any action unless Water Board wants to take action or make a recommendation on any of them. We're going to kind of tag team on this. We've got a couple of different ones. Hope's going to talk about a couple of water conservation ones. Chris is going to update us a little bit on the I'll call it farmer waters U.S. dredge and fill bills that are in the legislature. I would like to highlight just one bill, which is the CWCB project bill. That's the third one on your list there. That's the typical, every year CWCB puts a project list bill in front of the legislature. So it's House Bill 1435. Most of these bills, a couple of them were taking a position on, most of them were staying neutral on. This one, staff did recommend to city council to support it. I've kind of, some years we support this bill, some years we just stay neutral. Honestly, it almost, well, it's, as long as I've been around, it's always passed. So it's really a nonpartisan, very positive bill for the state. For us, though, one reason we recommend supporting it, first is in that bill, it's continuation of the satellite monitoring system. The state has to appropriate money every year. The satellite monitoring system is what the state uses to do all of these stream gauges. I mean, we directly use that. It gives us data for all the way from Button Rock to the mouth of the St. Main, and so that, not only us, but everybody in the state. So that was very important. The second thing is modeling and data analysis for the Upper Colorado River Commission's development of operational guidelines for Lake Powell and Lake Mead. That's obviously a real big issue right now, and getting that going. The most direct one, though, is in section 4, which is on page 2 of the bill. The very first one is CWCB authorized to make loans, and number 1 is an amount up to $155 million to the Windy Gap Firming project. When I first saw that 155, I panicked a little bit, but as part of it, and it'll actually be part of our cash and move conversation. It's anticipated we'll have some change orders and some additional costs on the Windy Gap Firming project. To pay for that, the Windy Gap Firming project is going to, or has applied to Colorado Water Conservation Board for $65 million loan. That's the number that's in your cash and move packet. We're 75 over 90 of that, 75 over 90 of that. The $155 million is actually the original loan of $90 million, which was part of the original financing. Longmont's not part of that. That was for the participants that didn't bring cash to the project, whereas we brought cash. But we are part of the 65 million, so it's kind of weird. This 90 million was approved years and years ago, but because they're increasing it, they have to ask for the full amount, and don't ask me why. But so that is a direct financial interest of the city for this project. So we did recommend that it hasn't gone too far. It wasn't introduced until April 1st, just a couple weeks ago. It's passed already, though it's already passed the Ag and Water Resources Subcommittee, who has sent it on to the Appropriations Committee. Because most of this money comes out of the severance tax, they don't have to come up with money at the legislature, so it's very, almost guaranteed to pass. But that's one bill of great interest to us that will benefit us. And then I'll turn it over to Chris. We would like to talk a little bit more about the dredge and fill. And Chris, I don't know if you heard yet. In fact, Scott just got an email from Sean that we just found out they've amended the Senate bill to strike the
DNR.
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 And put it, so now both bills say CDPHE.
Yeah, I haven't, Dan and I got the same email. We haven't looked at the documents, but that's the summary of the.
Okay. So yes, I've been following both the House and the Senate bill. And we, through City Manager's Office, Sandy Cedar, have provided comments to Representative McCormick, who is on the House bill. We had some concerns about CDPHE being able to administer this type of a program. And we gave support to, I guess, what was originally the Senate bill. I did listen to this, both the agricultural committees for the House and for the Senate. And I'm assuming that on the Senate bill, at the agricultural committee, there was 6 proposed amendments. And I thought they adopted 4 of the 6, and I thought that they had not adopted changing it to CDPHE, but maybe something happened in between. And I will say, listening to all of the testimony and the way that the State House does things, I'm very, very appreciative of our council and our courts and handle business. So we're continuing to watch and follow those. But we had supported the Senate bill and had asked for the House bill either to be amended or a no vote on that. So that's where we are today.
Okay.
And Chris, if we have bad information, we apologize. Again,
It could very
we
well.
didn't read the 5 attachments that show amendments. I'm scrolling through them right now and I haven't seen
I
that
will
yet,
go back
so.
and look at it too, just to
Yeah,
see where
but
we
that was
are.
today for sure, so.
And things seem to hold and hold and hold for a long time, and then all of a sudden everything happens. So that's.
They got the long bill done, right?
I'm sorry.
I said they got the long bill done.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, and that's probably why the logjam is breaking.
Yeah. This is the typical last 3 weeks of the session. I get it. I get it. So anyway, we'd be happy if there want additional information on that. And then there were 2 water conservation bills that Hope will inform you about. One of them already signed by the governor, so.
Yeah, so,
Just, are you done with your piece of it?
Yes.
Okay. I hope I didn't mean to interrupt you.
that's okay.
Go, Hope.
All right, so Senate Bill 24005, which is the prohibition of non-functional turf, artificial turf, and invasive plant species. This is the one that was passed and signed by the governor already, so we just wanted to give a quick overview of it. I'm sure you guys have seen it. But basically, it's prohibiting non-functional turf on commercial and institutional or industrial property, common interest community property, which is HOAs, non-recreational sites in those HOAs, such as the entryways or the breezeways between homes, street right-of-ways, parking lots, medians, transportation corridors. Basically, the best way to think about non-functional turf is if people are recreating on it, it's functional. If they're not, non-functional. So anything in our arterial spaces, right-of-ways, anything like that that has historically just been an easy pass of Kentucky bluegrass will no longer be allowed from the state. And artificial turf will no longer be allowed on any spaces except for athletic fields. So those are okay, and they're not allowed on homeowners' lawns, is my understanding. But, and then they also defined water-wise landscape. So I just wanted to put that out there as well. It's water and plant management practice that's intended to be functional and attractive, emphasizes the use of plants that require lower supplemental water, and prioritizes the 7 key principles of xeriscaping, which were coined by Denver Water. The city of Longmont is in a good place. We feel ahead of the game because we just received our code review and recommendations report. So that is, we had a code review and recommendations report by a third-party consultant, and it's currently going through the planning and development department leadership. They're taking a look at it, and then myself and the sustainability and environmental planner for the city are going to council in July to provide information on the recommendations report, but mostly we're going to be those recommendations and ask for direction will be driven by this Senate bill. So we hope to bring code updates, design standard updates driven by this Senate bill in July. So that is great. And then we also have our turf replacement plan up and going. We should have that by the end of May. And just a reminder, that is a project with Water Now Alliance. And they are putting together a plan for us to be able to identify non-functional turf on city-owned properties using a matrix of variety different measures so that we can identify turf replacement projects that we want to do on city-owned properties, including heat index. So it won't only be water conservation. We'll look at heat index, we'll look at communities, like low impact development, lower served communities, those types of things. So it will be great. Hopefully by the end of May we'll have that report so we can bring that together. And then lastly, the gray water bill that is in legislation. Under current law, local governments may opt in to gray water use, but this bill proposes an opt-out system. According to our planning department, we will opt out as we wait for Boulder County Department of Health to develop regulations. And then our planning and building inspection departments will take the lead on this issue.
So the bill proposals, what do you see as some of the bigger impacts for us in Longmont? Are there anything significant, or?
For the gray water or for the
No,
non-functional?
for the bill that's addressing turf, the whole, you know, the other things that you mentioned.
Yeah, the non-functional turf. I actually feel really good about where we are. We're ahead of the game because we've already had our code reviewed. We're already looking at a turf replacement plan, and our environmental and sustainability planner, he reviews all of the development plans, all of the landscape development plans for everything that comes in the city, residential and commercial. And so now, moving forward, any projects that come to him with non-functional turf, he will not approve them and send them back for redevelopment of their landscapes. So that's good. I feel good about where we're at. I feel like we were heading in this direction regardless of state direction. So I don't think there will be any unforeseen circumstances.
That's good.
Yeah.
The original bill, or the bill signed, gave all the entities until January 1st, 2026. And so, honestly, a year and a half, we just had to scramble a little bit if we were starting new today.
Yeah.
But because of Hope's efforts in water, and our growing water smart contingent in the city, and the work that's done, we're a long ways down the road for this. So that's really gonna, we're fortunate not to be starting from ground zero right now.
Mark, you got, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut
No,
you off.
were you done?
Well, I was just gonna say, it will impact the way future arterials, future non-essential turf areas look.
But it's not gonna be significantly impactful to us.
No, I think we're gonna be fine, yeah.
I was listening to the discussion on the gray water, because, you know, all the, some people wanted us to cut our consumption by 50% or 30% or whatever, are really into gray water. And, you know, in Longmont, we don't want any gray water going down our storm sewers, right? Because we have sensitive riparian areas right here. But it looks like, sorry, that's okay. It looks like these they were amending it to restrict it to indoor gray water use, like flushing your toilet. Did that stick?
That is something we would do locally.
Oh, okay.
We are most likely going to need to do that,
Mhm.
just from a water rights perspective. Northern Water, their board, in the past, we couldn't do gray water at all because of the CBT component. Now the Northern Board has said internal gray water is okay, but external is not. So if at some point in the future, if we want to allow it, we'll have to get around that issue, most likely by saying no outside gray water use inside. And so, for both reasons, it's probably gonna be that way.
Okay.
And so they've decided that that's a workaround for, I mean, because historically, CBT water, I just could never be reused, and that was the agreement, let's say, that they had with, you know, far downstream users essentially. And so they've squared this with their own, I mean, they're trying to update essentially, but while keeping true to the intent of that original agreement or something.
Yeah, their philosophy was, if it's internal, for using your shower water to flush your toilet, it's kind of a circuitous route inside the house, but
Yeah,
eventually it's
got
the
it.
sanitary sewer system and is released, treated and released.
And there won't be evaporative loss and all the things that
Exactly.
you would worry
If
about.
you reuse it outside,
Right, exactly. Okay, interesting.
Any other comments on water conservation? Thanks, Hope.
Are you ready for me to go through my report?
Sorry?
Was that next? Yeah, I'm next. And continue.
I'm sorry, I didn't know you were done.
That's okay.
Or didn't think you
There's
were.
a segue into everything.
Yeah,
Great
good.
segue.
All right, carry on.
Great, so just here to report the annual water conservation report from 2023. It's also in your packet, but I printed it out just in case. So this, the graph here is our gross gallons per capita per day and our population line. It continues, our water use continues to decrease as our population increases. This is seen industry-wide, and a big part of that is just the natural conservation that happens as standards with fixtures and irrigation standards get better, so our toilets don't flush 4 gallons anymore, they flush 1 or less. So that's a large part of it. Our 2023 gross gallons per capita per day was 114 gallons, which is down 43% from 2002. And 2023 saw a 19% reduction in demand, in our raw water demand from 2002. As was noted earlier, our goal is 10% currently, a 10% reduction in demand. So last year we doubled that. I would love to take credit for all of that, but we had a nice spring. So that's okay. We had a great demand year. So down below here, we have our programs and services lined up by our big breadwinners. So Resource Central, we offer the lawn replacement program, the garden in a box discounts, slow the flow appointments, and Waterwise yard seminars. So we estimate 4.2 million gallons saved with those programs. Our Northern Water programs, we have our landscape consultations for large properties like HOAs, nonprofits, churches, schools, city properties, irrigation audits on the same types of things, but they also do large property irrigation audits and for like golf courses or properties that have complicated irrigation systems. We started a new program with Northern Water, our CII, which is Commercial, Institutional, Industrial Audits. So we put 2 city properties through that audit. We put our rec center and the service center of this building through those audits with the Brindle Group, and they were really great. And so a large part of this 4.85 million gallons projected to be saved comes from those commercial building audits of how much water we can save if we upgraded our fixtures, if we do all of those kinds of things. And then the citywide, we got 2 community grants. So 2 HOAs got large Northern Water grants to do turf replacement projects. Efficiency Works is where we do our rebates and discounts. We saved 0.81 million gallons through there. And then our Growing Water Smart, I presented to you all a while back about our Growing Water Smart. This is just summarizing that larger report of the 2.3 million gallons saved. So annually, our program saved 12.16 million gallons. Our average monthly water use for single-family residential accounts is shown right there. And so we continue to perform well based on our average. And then below, I won't bore you with reading all of them, but below are some program highlights. Kensington Park, the code review for resilient landscapes is that code review and recommendations report that I was just briefly talking about. And then our non-functional turf replacement plan is also that project I was talking about just before, where will help us identify how we can be better for our water efficiency standards and practices within our city. And that will help us kind of codify and or put in better design standards moving forward.
That's kind of impressive, really,
Yeah.
compared to what we had used in the past. Maybe Marcia, your little project contributed a lot to the savings too, did it not?
Which?
Your lawn
Your
projects.
personal one.
Oh, yeah,
Take a
mine.
little credit, Marcia.
Didn't use that much to begin with, sadly.
Oh, that's right.
This is good news, hope.
The x-axis here on water use in 2023, is that like a water year, presumably?
It's annual, January to December. We use billing data for that type of graph.
Okay.
You may want that on there.
Good.
Any other questions for Hope? Good job, Hope, thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for not drilling me with all the questions.
Okay, Ken, you want to take 9C?
Sure. Just a quick update on the Windy Gap firming project. Actually, it's continuing to go well. Had a really good construction season this winter. We did get snow, but not very little to disrupt the construction. Probably a little bit less than we would have expected. So they did very well on construction this winter. But since our last water board meeting, the project's hit a number of milestones. The first, of course, is that it hit 50% of the embankment height, which is really great. It means everything's going along pretty well. The plinth is completely constructed. They've essentially got the grouting work done. And of course, by hitting 50% of the height of the dam, it triggered the second payment on the federal lawsuit. So that was a $5 million payment over to the West Slope for the settlement on that lawsuit. So that, as you might remember, the $15 million settlement on the case, $5 million immediately, $5 million when it hit 50% construction, and $5 million when it's completed. So we're 2/3 away on the payments of that, and hopefully that last payment will happen next year, because currently projected to be complete with the reservoir construction in August of 25, so just a little over a year from now. The other major milestone was on the tunneling, on the outlet tunnel. They actually holed through a couple weeks ago, which is very good. So now the tunneling is complete. They'll finish the last of the lining of the tunnel. They're actually just now starting to put in the outlet pipe itself through the tunnel. So that's very good. By doing that and starting that, they'll then be able to start construction of the outlet tower, which is really the most important thing to get going up, because it's at the very bottom of the reservoir, and you want to get that tower going up so that you get out of the bottom of the reservoir. The inlet works, outlet works, the valving for you may remember, we talked a little bit about the valving for the control house. Some of those valves were coming from Germany, and they were kind of being held up over there for ransom, I'll say. The contractors finally been able to resolve that and have all but a couple of the valves on site. Did have to settle with the valve manufacturer on some claims. Because of the length of time, they had some claims for increased costs. Those are now settled. Unfortunate, but they had the valves in Germany and they wouldn't ship them until that was settled. Very important to get them because the valve house is essentially ready to set those valves in and put the top on. Didn't want to have to set them. The buildings are designed to be able to take the valves in and out. They didn't want to try to do that the very first time. So now that those large valves are going to be coming, we'll be able to get that done. So all in all, was a really good month since our last meeting in terms of keeping the project moving forward. No real issues. In terms of the connectivity channel, it is of course down for the winter at that elevation. They don't work in the winter. So, but it's functional. I mean, they actually been running water through it. So that mostly be plantings and getting the diversion structure where you either divert into the reservoir or let it continue down the Colorado River. That control work needs to be done, and just minor cleanup, and the project should be well on the way. Probably the most significant issue right now is nutrient control. As part of the project, we agreed to nutrient neutrality, and that's because of the higher water quality in that area. It's very difficult to find anything to clean up. So good news is that the Three Lakes Water and Sanitation District, which has agreed to take on a whole bunch of septic systems and bring them into the system to treat the water. Not that it doesn't get treated somewhat in a septic system, but certainly doesn't get the treatment that a modern treatment facility would do. So, going to get some nutrient reduction through there. So, and that's really all I had on the project.
Just out of curiosity, the amount of labor, cost and labor to complete 0 to 50% of the reservoir versus 50 to 100%. Is the top portion a lesser amount?
It is. That's why we're.
I mean, it's kind of.
Yeah, that's why we've had a couple of years, well, 2.5 years, and we only got a little over a year to go. Because as you go up, you're going to get.
Yeah.
Now you're going to get a lot longer. The width of the dam is what's going to, I guess I'll say, is the challenge now. They're just about. I don't know if you remember the earlier pictures. There's a low spot on the west side that will have to be filled. They've been building the dam up to a ridge line, and then there's a low spot that will fill, and so they're just about to jump over to that and do that work, because once you get to the ridge line, you got to take the dam up, level. When that gets done, then it's about easily another third larger crest width, and that means really long runs with your core. You're getting narrower and narrower, and we're halfway in height, but probably closer to two-thirds actual embankment constructed, and it's going well.
Good.
Plus all the foundation work is done, it sounds like, so all the grouting.
Yeah.
So then all that's below ground, I mean below-ish ground, so you would never even realize that it happened necessarily if you're just watching the dam rise, I guess.
And that's all the area that you have the most unknowns, uncertainty, you know. Now it's pretty much so.
You know, just kind of a, not a side, but anyway, I heard that Northern Water is doing tours, busing people out to observation points now. I don't know.
They are.
Yeah,
And
just for everybody's information, if you're interested in.
yeah, feel free to, you know, get on their website. In fact, Heather just brought it up. You can get on Northern's website and sign up for any one of the tours. They're doing them every week. And I think you can sign up for May and June right now. And then a little bit later on, they'll open up July.
Yeah.
But, there we go, yeah. See yeah, it is getting much narrower. You can see this lower area over
Yeah.
here. As soon as they hit here,
Yeah,
then they have to go and fill that in, bring that up. And then you've got a much longer dam.
you got anything on this end, or is it pretty normal?
It's pretty normal. I mean, it goes
Yeah, you don't-
very steep.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's fun to go through those pictures
Yeah.
and watch it go up and down.
Great. Any questions for Ken? It's good reporting.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move back to item 8B, cash and lieu. And Ken, you got a lot of stuff to talk about, so, you know, before we even think about cash and lieu numbers, maybe you'd like to take us through what you've got here.
Okay, yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
And I did make one other comment. Renee, did everybody get Renee's? So maybe after you get through, and if we want to talk about anything that Renee submitted, we should do that too. So anyway, you go ahead.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, so firstly, we wanted to bring our quarterly review of cash and lieu forward. And then at the same time, we've been asked to review the overall program, so we wanted to combine the two together. We have really two areas that we need to consider when looking at the recommendation for the current cash and lieu price. The construction project's been going well, so as you recall, in 2020, late 21, 2022, we looked at the cash and lieu program, and it was both the Water Board's recommendation and council accepted that recommendation to base the primary basis for the cash and lieu on the Windy Gap firming project, and the full project, i.e. the parent project, which was the diversion damming, and the pumping plant, and also the Windy Gap firming project. So the original project, at the last setting, we decided to use the current market value, so to speak, of the Windy Gap parent project. At that time, PRPA had sold some units in around the $30,000 per acre foot range, and that's what we used, $30,000 for the parent project. And we had already set, and we're because we had made our payment for the construction of the Windy Gap firming project. That was $18,500 per acre foot. So that's the 48.5 that we have currently been using. PRPA put out to auction some additional units, and a couple of them was closed, but they're working on the last of that. So we believe by this summer we'll easily have that information. but we weren't ready to, well, PRPA asked us not to release any information on that until they were concluded then with all of them, including taking them to the board of Northern, because it's all sensitive. So what we put in the packet today was just looking at the firming project. And Water Board can, we've talked a little bit about the potential change order increase for Windy Gap firming. It actually, the actual change orders, there have been a number of change orders executed, and there's a few more in review right now. And of course, we paid we already inherent in the 18.5 number is all of the costs for the federal lawsuit. That was $22 million for delay costs to the contractor, $15 million for settlement. So that's a pretty significant part of it. The cost increases. That's already included in the 18.5. So we know that, and it's included. But because of how high that was, that ate into the contingency money for the project. And so we're at a point now where we need to plan for covering any late change order requests. Pretty much know what most of those are. Probably one of the bigger ones was the density of the fill, and I think we talked about that once before. I mean, the good news is that it's going in more dense. We're getting an even better embankment. That's good. The bad news is we've got to mine more rock because it's going in more dense. So that is going to, we've got to pay for the rock that's mined and put in the dam. So that increases the price a little. And, getting valves out of Germany and everything else. Right now, the best projection at completion of construction was about the $65 million increase that we talked about earlier that's in the CWCP projects bills. Because that amount is a very reasonable estimate of what that final bill will be, and what additional money beyond the money that was originally transferred for the project, that's been applied for. The CWCB's board has approved the loan, but it has to be approved by the legislature, which we feel will in the projects bill. We feel it's probably timely now to go ahead and include that in the overall cost of the firming project. And so that's just the simple math of about $750, which is actually, when you consider an $18,500 an acre foot project, it's $750 additional given the fact of the federal lawsuit. That's not a bad increase. But we felt it's probably time that we include that in the cash in lieu. So really, we feel that, the option would be to wait until a little bit later, until we know, until that actually those change orders are signed, but they really, the final numbers won't change that much. We feel like it's reasonable. So that's why we have in our recommendation that Water Board may want to consider going from 18.5 to 19,250, which makes the overall cash in lieu 49,250. So I'll stop there on the recommendation, and then the second half of this, what I'd like to go into is some requests for the board and staff to look at the whole cash in lieu program. And I guess I'll ask, would your preference be to leave the recommendation till the end, or take action on that now, or jump right into the review of the whole project?
I would prefer to wait till the end.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. So,
Nobody strongly objects, but yeah.
yeah, no. So let me kind of set the stage for what we were asked and kind of why we were asked it. Really, it comes down to, the city's been looking pretty hard about what can we do to help in development of specifically residential units for citizens. It's, prices of housing continue to go up in Longmont, and there is a concern both for attainable housing and affordable housing. There's also a concern that or a desire to be economically, commercially excuse me,
Competitive?
commercially viable to get new commercial development and industrial development in the community. So the city's kind of looking at all of its processes in the whole development arena. And one of the things that we were asked to do is look at cash in lieu. That's a big ask. I mean, that's a big subject, and it really goes back to, I will say the cash in lieu, the raw water requirement policy that the city's had formally for over 60 years now has served the city very well. I believe Longmont has one of the best water supplies around. Because of our raw water requirement policy and our water boards and councils in the past that have done excellent work, and so that makes us, I believe, the most challenging. I mean, the most competitive in the area from that standpoint. That being said, we've been asked to look at a number of them. So the first thing we wanted to do before we got into reviewing the aspects of the specifically the cash in lieu portion of our raw water requirement, but also the raw water requirement policy itself. You can't change cash in lieu without changing the raw water requirement policy. The first thing we wanted to do was just kind of give a historical context. So in the write-up, because for the, I know the water board knows our raw water requirement policy, but for citizens, I tried to give a short summary. If any of the citizens want to, review the water board and get up to speed on this subject. Then we wanted to put a little historical context, because it's really easy to forget all these numbers and over time. So first on page 37 of the packet, our first item we put in there was a summary of the cash in lieu fee, what it's done over time. Started out at $100 in 1965, and it's gone up and down. And actually, if you use like the last 10 or 15 years, it's gone down as much as it's gone up, about equal number of changes. So, Water Board has tried to follow what is happening in the water resources world. But of course, we're all aware the biggest increase was a couple years ago when we went to 485. The second summary is actually cash in lieu received. Two reasons. Obviously we've received most of our cash in lieu in the last 10 years. The biggest portion we've received over the life of the project. Part of that, of course, was because the cash in lieu is higher. But an equal reason for that is that non-historical water rights are almost exclusively used to meet the deficit, whereas today non-historical water rights are getting much harder to find and much more expensive.
I would assume in those numbers, though, there is also growth, which has also been, I would assume, a little bit like this in Longmont.
Absolutely. You can really see The 75 to 84 period where kind of the IBM and
Yeah.
storage tech and those things
Mhm.
kind of busted up.
And the housing crash.
Then the housing crash of the late 80s.
Well, I was
Well-
thinking of the '08.
Yeah,
The only-
well, yeah, you can really see the '08 because we went from 4 to 1. The '08 crash really
Slowed everything down.
well, not only does it slow things down, that, you know, before that, you know, the developers were getting a little ahead with vacant lots.
Yeah.
And then, not only did it slow it down, but then they just said, well, we'll just fill in. And then, that's probably why the 10 million to 2000, this 2015 to 2022 was still, it was 18.5, so it wasn't way out of range with the other years. But yeah, it was, then they needed to recreate that surplus. And so, but that's, overall, we've collected a little over $18 million for cash in lieu over the life of the program. Then the next summary is, you know, where we expended that. I just have the last 10 years, because I didn't want to send somebody down in the bottom of the basement of the Civic Center in dusty boxes. We can do that, and we will try to get that information, but I didn't have enough time to get all of that exact numbers. And I hate to say it, but we're right in the middle of our budget season, and I didn't want to burden our budget folks, ask them to walk away from what they're doing to get that done. But essentially, in the last 10 years, we've spent about $235,000 in water conservation. Water Board may recall about 10, 15 years ago, we decided to spend some of the water conservation funding comes out of cash in lieu water acquisition, because the philosophy is that if, you know, we can either save water and spend our money, and that will save having to go get water, or we can go buy water. So it was felt, we try to kind of target about half and half for water conservation. We have a base budget that comes out of water rates, operations, and then we have additional money that comes out of water conservation. So that's about 235. We have about a lot of direct water rights in the last 10 years. We spent about 200,000 on water rights, which is not a whole lot.
Small amount.
Yeah.
Mostly, yeah. Mostly the next item, the one you got for me, we've been trying to basically save that money, cash in lieu money for the Windy Gap Fermi project, because once we issue the bonds, we pay that every year. And so we spent, I can't remember exactly, around 4 or 5 million for cash that we sent up to Northern as part of the overall package for payment for Windy Gap. And then we've made a payment this year. I think it's about 1.9 million on the bond, and we'll continue to do that each year. The amount of the Windy Gap Fermi project that was set for new development will be paid for cash moved to water acquisition. The amount that's for existing, kind of firming up, we did firm up some of the existing water supply, and that comes out of construction fund, or excuse me, operations fund. And I don't have the exact numbers on all that because I don't have the amount they paid this year for the bond. But we'll get those exact numbers over time. Then we also started an economic development incentive that comes out of cash in lieu. That's very, very limited, but in fact, we've only used it one time. It's been there for about 10 years. It's only been used one time. To be honest, it was the Costco. And so that was $478,000. And then we also pay for some water court costs for transferring water rights that we acquire. So that was 66 cents. So we've got about $12 million that we've paid out in the last 10 years of the 18. We've got about $5 million in the water acquisition fund right now. And then we had spent $1 million or two prior to 2013 on other water rights. So that's kind of where we are overall, but we're sitting fairly good with the water acquisition fund, at 5 million. We're concerned that we continue to have enough money in there to help pay for the Windy Gap firming project, because those payments come every year. At 5 million plus one, that's enough for about 2.5 years, and then we'll have some water acquisition funds coming in the future, hopefully to stay up with or ahead of that bond. It is backed up by our, in addition to the cash in lieu or water acquisition fund, we also have a Windy Gap surcharge on the tap fee, and that Windy Gap surcharge plus the water acquisition is what we'll use to pay for Windy Gap firming, and that should keep us up there, but we'll see. You never know the future. So that's really where all of that's going on. So then I wanted to jump into some of the questions that we were asked, specific, and we're not, go ahead, Dan.
No, going back to the water acquisition fund,
Yes.
wasn't the water acquisition fund used to purchase part of Sandstone Ranch? Some of the water rights associated with, and I'm just thinking of some of the other things. I thought that water acquisition fund was used to buy the more recent corner of McCall Lake, and wasn't the acquisition fund used to buy the Adams property up at Button Rock? So I'm just saying, I thought you.
That was operations fund.
Okay.
That paid for that, yeah.
But I was just thinking that there was a lot, because I just, off the top of my head, thinking, like Sandstone, the water was a lot more than $206,000.
I'd have to, yeah, see, but that was more than 10 years ago. I'd have to go back.
Well, I mean, in your range between, yeah, okay, yeah, because that was 98 or whatever for Sandstone. But
I'll certainly go back and look.
I was just,
When we get that far
okay,
back.
yeah, sorry.
But,
Just
yeah, time goes.
back here.
I get it.
Ken, is the surcharge reviewed annually and reset, or is that indexed in some fashion? Because obviously there's a component of that goes along with inflation, right?
It has been looked at a couple of times. It's based on, it's a percentage of the tap fee. So as the tap fee goes
Yeah.
up, it's going to inherently go up a little bit.
Right.
But
So it's fixed.
it's a percentage of the,
Yeah. Thanks.
like a surcharge of 120%. I don't know what it even is right now.
Yeah, that's helpful, thanks.
That
Ken, just a question, before you get into the review issue number one, where did these questions come from?
It originally came down from the city manager's office, who was looking at overall city and everything that's happening.
I mean, was council involved in any of these questions? Was it just,
I'm not.
do you know anything about
sure.
these
Yeah,
questions?
council did not send any approve any questions to be sent to you.
All right.
Okay.
So these are city manager driven?
Yeah, city manager's office asking us to review it.
Okay, you want to get going on it?
Okay, I'll jump into them. The first one is, what is the impact of cash in lieu on the cost of development in the community? One of the things we wanted to do was kind of put it into perspective. So what we did is we took what the actual cash in lieu that has come in. So we looked at all the plats for the last 10 years, There were 36 plats with deficits approved. 70% of them paid at least some cash in lieu. A lot of developers will bring in some non-historical water and then just kind of supplement, the last little bit with cash in lieu. 602 acre feet of deficit paid by cash in lieu. Deficit from non-historical water is 249 acre feet. But over 10 years, that represents 5,300 units of plats that had deficits. So that comes out to $2,298 per unit, which, putting that into
Per
perspective.
living unit?
Per dwelling unit, yes. Well, I would say per house, but anymore,
No,
it's
I
mostly
mean,
per apartment.
I mean, if you have
Yeah.
a 20-unit apartment, they're in that number, 20 units, right?
Yeah.
Wait, no, say that again. So is that per unit of single-family housing, or is that per unit of multifamily housing?
It's average of
Total units.
All of it, okay.
All units.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good to know.
And admittedly, we're putting in more, if you put in apartment units, your per unit cost is gonna go down,
Way lower.
way down. If you have housing, single family housing, then it's a little bit higher. If you got one big huge business, it's much higher. So what we wanted to do was kind of put it into context of what does a unit cost today and how much of that is apportioned, would you ascribe to cash in lieu? Not that we would argue everything we can do to bring down the cost of housing is good, but just wanted to keep it into perspective of what that is. And keeping in mind that that's the cash in lieu portion, not the non-historical water.
Let me just ask you a question. Your first sentence, as far as it's expressed the cost of cash in lieu has recently created a substantial impact on the ability of development. I assume that's saying it created a negative impact on development in Longmont.
Yeah, it's making it.
Now, there's a perception out there that development is not slowing down in Longmont, and it's fairly robust. Now, that's just a perception I hear from a lot of people. So my question would be, is development factually slowing down in Longmont? Cash in lieu aside, I'm just curious about that.
So it's a really good question, and honestly, I've only been looking at the water stuff. That side of it, I can't tell you, but we certainly can get that information. I don't know, Chris, do you might have a little more sense than I?
If you look at straight numbers of plats that we've processed or numbers of permits that are going out, permits is a little hard because I think we're still up in the 7,000 to 8,000 permits, but what are those permits for per year? But the feeling, which we can put numbers to, is that we are processing fewer plats and fewer units per year than we have in the past.
But wait. Yeah, I mean, sorry, I'm jumping in. 2020, hit building department processes hard. And so I think your data could have noise in it. But also interest rates have gone up. I mean, there's a lot of different factors that drive this. I think it's a great question, but it's gonna be hard to really suss out, is it because interest rates have gone up and so the housing market's cooled?
Yeah, I don't know if we
Yeah.
can put a specific cause to effect.
Yeah.
But I think what Ken is showing too, though, is that the overall impact of paying cash in lieu for a unit is not substantial.
Is not what?
Is not substantial. When you are selling a unit for $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $200,000 and
$2,300 is like.
$2,300 is not
That's
substantial in that total cost.
Yeah, accurate?
Well, I think there's a couple other factors coming in here. So, there's a lot of interesting public perceptions going around, and some of them are very active public perceptions in that the public is raising a fuss, probably against their own actual interest. But, you know, what's really going on in terms of the council is that we don't like to approve single-family developments.
Say that again, Mark.
We don't like to approve single-family developments. So, you know, on the one hand, you can build apartments or you can build townhouses and single-family developments, but because of the construction defects, nobody wants to build condos, which is probably what we really need in Longmont.
Is that idea or conception just cooled off at all, or is that alive and well, people still don't want to touch condos?
Well, it's not that they don't want to touch them, it's that it's very expensive to touch them because.
The lawsuit and stuff?
No, because they have to buy insurance policies to finance their project, and stacked flat type condos, because they've got so many units per building. The way the construction defects law is written makes the insurance policies really high, because the presumption is that you're going to do a class action thing, you're going to have to touch every single apartment if one apartment is defective or one flat is defective. So, and the legislature does not seem to have gotten their heads around that problem. So there was actually a bill that I think failed, but I'm not sure. But there was a bill that actually made it worse. You know, they wanted to add consumer protections, and so they like toughened up the law in the form that it's already in. And like I said, you know, the city weighed in to oppose that, and I don't know whether that does any good or not, but you know, the legislature's not on the right track to fix it yet. But
And this condo situation's gotta be a state problem.
it is. It's a state problem, but Boulder County is worse off than most places because we're landlocked. We have landlocked ourselves.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to find places to build single-family homes. And right now what's happening is we're building a lot more for-sale townhouses. And the Mustang project that the city just did, real soon now, we will release the data on that pretty much tells you how to build for-sale properties at least cost. But you know, that is a problem. And then to go all the way back and answer the question, it means that the per unit is a bigger chunk of smaller units, because what's happening is that we are tending to approve high density proposals, and the other thing that's going on is that they're taking a long time to get permitted, and partly it's because the neighborhoods are rising up and forcing charrettes and lawsuits and all kinds of craziness because they don't want it built at all. So one thing that I wanted to say, because I've got to leave at 4:30 unfortunately, just when we're getting
To good stuff.
getting to the good stuff, but I read Renee's memo, and the thing that jibes the most and it was a good memo overall, I thought so, but the thing that jibes the most with any of the recommendations that Renee made was that we want to revise the fee in lieu less often and on a date certain, because that's consistent with the affordable housing fee in lieu. That's the feedback we got from developers.
Just to clarify, I proposed annually, which would be more often. A less frequent review, more often change. Because we haven't changed it in a year and a half, 2 years,
Yeah,
2
no, I
years.
know. In fact, well,
Yeah.
what I was gonna
Right.
say about it was that a year apart probably isn't enough. And what difference does it make if you say it's 2 years or 3 years the way the fee in lieu is? Because what a developer cares about is can he lock in his financing before it's gonna change under his feet. And if it takes him 2 years to get financing, then he can look at where he is in that revision cycle and do well with the bank. What?
No double-digit increases.
Oh, yeah, although,
Steady.
yeah,
Plan for, I think, better.
I think keeping it small is probably a good idea in general, but interestingly enough, on the affordable housing side, they didn't say that. They said what we want is to not change when we're in conversation with a bank.
Yeah.
And they were actually advocating for a big increase in fee in lieu because it was so far out of balance. They just wanted to know when exactly it was gonna happen. So I unfortunately have a thing.
I don't
that-
think that's a big deal, timing it kind of on an annual basis. Giving, everybody understand there's a change here,
Yeah.
we're gonna change it, and this is the periodically when we're gonna do that stuff. I
Yeah.
don't think that's a big issue, but anyway.
Well, it's a big issue for the developers as
Well,
well.
no, I mean, to put it on a schedule so the
Uh-huh.
developers know when it's at,
Yes.
that's my point.
It's not hard for this board to do, that's a sense of
Yeah,
revision.
it makes sense,
Yeah,
so.
yeah,
Just because our variables don't move as much as some of the other competing jurisdiction variables do, because the other ones that were based solely on CBT saw their rates go like this in a period of about 9 months.
Yeah.
So they had to adjust relatively nimbly to reflect the true market price. Well, we're not based on that. Our costs will not change substantially year to year based, at least upon what we're basing on today.
yes, especially
If
with
we
the
change that,
report
then we
we
change
just
it,
heard.
but yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, yeah, I
So the
agree.
developer perception is based upon other jurisdictional challenges that they face.
And the developer perception is, they were really caught in between a rock and a hard place this year because,
Yeah.
we had all the supply chain stuff and inflation and all of that hoo-ha that really messed up their costs and their financing. But, yeah, but the main point they said was they want a date certain.
Yeah.
And it might be even interesting to align that change with the city's other fee in lieu changes. I don't know, somebody that understands construction better than me, but it seems like that's a corollary, is that you'd like all those changes to happen sort of in lockstep.
Hate to see you leave, Marcia.
Do you think there's anything else I know? I'm
Well, hey.
feeling fairly stupid these days.
Well, I'm always trying to get a sense of where the council is on things, and
Yeah.
you're our link to
Yeah.
where the council is, so I'm just saying, this, we may not finish this discussion today,
Okay,
so if we don't, please come back next time. But I don't know if we will or not, but
Yeah.
it's a meaty issue.
yeah.
It's very important too.
It is, because we have a big housing deficit, which is, it's more difficult because the public doesn't like building housing right now.
So before you leave, can I ask you, do you think $2,300 is a significant impact to development?
I truly don't have a feel.
Okay.
I don't.
Well, it's a little different than that too. It's not $2,300.
What's it?
It's some incremental small amount of money. It's like $300, really. I mean, like
And
10%.
that's only 5,000 of
I
the
mean,
units.
Well, yeah, I guess what I'm saying is like, we would have to relinquish the entire cost of all the water in order for $2,300 to be the actual amount that like a developer would see, right? Like, if we changed our procedure such that there was a 10% change or something, that's only like $2,200 or $220 or something. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So, are we done with issue 1?
Not even close.
Aren't you glad you got yours out of the way, Hope?
Thank you for that.
Well, we sort of got into issue 2 as well.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah, time.
agree with the concept of timing it. My personal opinion is we ought to set something in the 4th quarter and tell them we're gonna be effective in January 1st. Something easy for everybody to understand.
They would like a longer lead time.
I was gonna say, we should probably have our process, and like if we were to make some change, right? We should make our process in place such that we make a decision by June that gets implemented by January or something.
Or, you know, city does their budget, they do revenues and expenses, so
Yeah,
why
that's
is it incorporated in the budget process? So that everybody knows that everything's gonna get a 3% or 4% or what that might look like, and it's set for the year, and boom, and it's incorporated into the budget process.
I don't know what the lead time is, maybe a quarter's time is too short.
A quarter's time is too short.
Okay,
For,
well, that's good
again,
input.
for specifically for developers financing projects, and remember, you know, they've got to get all that stuff done before they do much with the city. So,
And in context of the overall discussion, we have been asked about the possibility, and which will, at some point we'll get in, we'll have that conversation too. We're asked, is there a possibility that, and I'll just make up a time, when they sign the annexation agreement, or they sign the plat, can we establish, lock in for a set period of time? And I'm just gonna make up a number, 2 years. That then they would know, because what we don't want to do is lock it in. We occasionally have somebody, yeah, I had this plat in 1967,
Yeah.
you know, and we'll
All
get
the
something
titles, yeah.
platted 20, 30 years before. But there's a request out there that, well, can we help the developer by giving them a certainty of 2 years?
3.
3. We can do. But,
Sorry.
and we're not gonna,
We want the money.
and I should have prefaced all of this, we're not gonna even ask Waterboard for recommendations today. I'm gonna come back next meeting with a proposed schedule where we look at all of this. It's gonna take some time. So all we wanted to do is outline all the issues today, so you can be thinking about it. We've got a whole ton of information we've got to get for Waterboard to make decisions, but this is exactly what we wanted.
Come back, Marcia.
I'll watch the last half, now that you're going to recommend next month. My conscience is like.
Yeah, we won't wrap this up this meeting.
Yeah, no, we're honestly thinking we wanted to introduce it today, probably in May and June. We'll come back with a schedule for doing the whole process in probably July, August time period. We'll come back with, there's a number of studies we need to do to provide Waterboard with information like, you know, what are all the other communities doing? We can bring that information. We also want to actually talk with the development community and find out directly from them what is the biggest impact to them. You know, if we don't want to be changing this all around and have them saying, well, actually, we liked it the way you had it.
Well, go ahead. Who said so?
I just said, so with that said, part 2 of today's discussion is really just information for us. And the initial issue of bumping cash in lieu to $49,250 is something you want to prove today, or is that again down the road?
If you're comfortable with just doing that as a change, then yes, we can take a recommendation and we take that Waterboard. If you want some immediate changes to the code, then that'll take a little bit longer. As we go through this, one of the requests we've had is don't do a lot of changes, so we have to put it in, are you comfortable doing this change now and waiting for the change on the parent project maybe a year from now? Or would you rather wait I mean, we'll know this summer the last information on PRPA, so we could maybe roll
No,
those two together.
we don't have the information. My feeling is, let's not do anything until we get the information.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I don't like to make decisions if there's something that's gonna impact them.
Yeah, especially with everything we're talking about.
So my preference is, we don't change anything until we get all our information.
Okay.
And I'm gonna respectfully contrast that, and that is I would like for us to have some deadline of not just waiting for the next best thing. I feel like we're overdue for a change, is my opinion. We are overdue for a change. It's been 2 years. We had some information in October and a plan to do so, and now here we are in April and we haven't changed. So again, this is why I think a deadline, an annual deadline, could be helpful for the board, because sometimes it feels like we're waiting for the next
Next
best,
thing.
What
the next
if we,
quarterly review, and I'd like us to get to
Go
swing
ahead,
good or
Tom.
bad.
I was just gonna ask Renee, so when I read the memo, and thank you, by the way, for the thoughts on the page, because it's really helpful. I guess I didn't understand until I hear you speak about it now, that like, are you suggesting that at those yearly intervals, that there is a change, that there's almost like
Yeah.
a necessary change at every single one of those intervals, rather than, it's not the quarterly review that we do right now where we say, well, let's just leave it how it is, but instead, it
It's more of
sounds
an
like
action point. It's a-
you're saying fewer reviews, but more individual punctuated kind of changes.
Absolutely, and I know it's been said differently, but my belief is that if you have a 3% increase or a 5% increase, or, you know, whatever's kind of warranted, but if you do that annually, that's great. If you do it every 2 years and now it's a 10% increase, that seems to me like it would be hard to deal with. I know I, as a ratepayer, which is a different thing, but when I see a 10% rate increase, I'm like, ouch, that hurts. And if I were planning, you know, our cash in lieu is small compared to a unit, but it's a chunk of money. And to bump that up by 20%, that seems to me to be like, I would like to see small annual changes.
Well,
And not just review, but changes. I mean, we're recommending city council changes, but take action and kind of a do it sort of thing. Like the deadline element of, we're gonna do something.
Well, why don't we target that we will do something this year to be effective January 1st, and use that kind of as a guideline.
So,
So maybe we need to make the decision in June, July, I don't know what, but I don't think it makes sense, again, to do something now if we're waiting for information. That's just my feeling. But I think we ought to have something targeted that will make a change and have it effective the 1st of January. That's just my thoughts.
I was just gonna say that, I mean, so, you know, from like a developer's perspective or something, right, like, they buy, I don't know, 2x4s or something, like, every day, or something, like, close to anyway, right? And so they see the change in timber or something, like, instantaneously, right? Water sells so infrequently that we really have no understanding of like the market price of water at any given moment until those momentary or episodic kind of instances when there is an auction, when there is
especially for
something,
the Windy Gap
you know.
parent project, I don't think those are gonna be selling every year.
They haven't been.
Right.
I don't think they're gonna be.
Yeah,
No.
and so I guess I'm wondering, like, I feel like what we've been doing is that we wait until we see what the real market change is. It's just that we haven't had the information in these last 2 years to really say that we should make a change, because we have, those 2 years have been kind of devoid of information, right? And so if we were to implement some kind of, I don't know, you'd have to have a really good discussion, I guess, about like, how do we make decisions based on what we think the rate, or what we think the water, how the water is gonna change in value over this time, to kind of like, to kind of average over these episodic changes, right? So in other words, rather than just 2 years from now change at 10%, what if over the next, I don't know, every 6 months it goes up 1% or something, right? Like it's a different mindset. In one instance, we have these periodic instances when we definitely know what the water's worth. The other instance, we're gonna be kind of like assuming or kind of like projecting into the future what we think the water will be worth in 2 years, and then try to smooth over this huge change,
But
right?
dealing with what we have now, what date do you propose, do you think we'll have the numbers that we've been waiting for on the sale? Will that be done by June, you
Yeah.
think?
It might be done for the June quarterly meeting. I just don't know when they'll end up taking it to the board.
Yeah, it's out of your control.
Pretty sure it's this summer. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's all for, is it something that's not our control?
Because I'm a rate setting nerd and a system development charge nerd, I was reading a case called Krupp versus Breckenridge, where a developer sued the city of Breckenridge because they didn't like how the SDC was calculated. And one of the findings in Krupp, I'm not an attorney, but I'm gonna wait out of my depth, was that you don't have to have perfect information to set a fee. You have to have reasonable information. And you have to have like a rationale that's consistent when you do it. But you don't always have to wait for perfect information. So I think that we can also use that to say, hey, we're gonna make a careful, deliberative change, but we may not have perfect information. Now, I'm okay if we wanna wait a couple months, but I also feel like we've been waiting, and I really would have loved to not have to have paid any of my inflation that I've experienced this last 2 years.
What's that last thing you said?
I would have loved to not have to pay any inflation the last 2 years. And right now, our development community has not had to pay any inflation or any increases for 2 years on cash and lieu. They've had a stay of
We've been too
increases.
easy on them?
I don't want to be
I
too
hear what
harsh,
you're
but I
saying.
don't want to be too easy.
Yeah.
It's
No,
a-
I meant
You've got to thread a needle here. And so when you say wait till January, I'm like, oh, I wish I could get that break. So I would like to do it soon, but I would also love information, and yet we may not get perfect information. I don't have a clear date for you.
And again, the parent is one thing, the change order is another. Do we anticipate another change order? I mean, we know that $750 is the cost for the change order, is that not correct?
Yes, that's the anticipated change to the completion of construction.
I have no
I
problem
don't,
bumping
yeah, it
it
could go up.
to $49,250.
It's less than inflation.
Well, if
Well, let me tell you what
so,
I'll tell you what my problem is. Cash in lieu, we were looking at cash in lieu number last September. Took it up to what?
63.
63. And now all of a sudden, we're looking at 750. I don't get it. I just, to me, that is, what happened? Weren't the numbers any good you put together last fall?
Well,
To go from one to down to
It's
750?
speculative, I think.
No, I
Based
think they
on-
were based on one sale, right? And I remember being the person that said, hey, wait, it's only one of the units sold? Can we get all 5 units sold?
Yeah.
It was me that threw the flag on that play, guys.
I think the September one included, reflected the contemplated parent water adjustment, where this 750 only looks at the one half of the equation, only looks at that
Small
construction cost. So it's just a matter of coming up with what is the value of the parent water. And we thought we knew it, but again, PRPA's asked us, they're not gonna share what that actually is gonna be until they close on it.
So
So,
that change order is a known quantity.
yes, that's right, that's correct. That is known.
But if you change it modestly in the short term,
Mhm.
with the expectation that it's going to change substantially when that information is publicly available,
Right.
and on which, and Chris, you can shoot me if you want to, but I'm not the attorney for Longmont. You guys have counsel, so you can ask counsel what's defendable and what's not defendable, right? Because it is a rational basis, it's a reasonable basis, and that's not for us to say. That's for legal counsel for the city to say, but that's where the big step's going to be, and the timing of that is unknown. And the price of that is unknown, but it's gonna be the big piece, right? So putting it up by 750 for the next 90 days is not gonna garner a lot of revenue for the city. If there's development going through in the next 90 days paying that, the next step's gonna be substantial. And we don't know the timing, we don't know the price, but we know it's gonna be substantial relative to the $750 per unit cost for change orders, right? So it's a conundrum, and it's frustrating as all get out, because we talked about this 8 months ago.
My point is 750 it's kind of meaningless.
And my only point is that 750
Is
is
defendable.
minuscule,
Yeah.
and it's not that big ticket item,
Yeah.
but.
I understand, but
Keep it moving.
It's small but defendable, so,
Yeah.
and that's
But
always.
you raise it
that-
twice then probably within
Yeah.
180
Oh, you
days.
just raised
Well,
it.
But you know, I think if we were to say, probably not, but
No,
if
no,
we
no.
were to
I was
say,
just-
we're gonna raise it now, today, we're gonna recommend a raise of this small amount. And then we're gonna wait until we get parent project data, and we're gonna raise it again in October. And then, starting in 2025, we're gonna aim for an annual raise that's a little clearer and a little less, and it gives us the deadline to make the choice. I think that would be still legit. I think that would still be fair and clear to our public. You know, because we're kind of in this older mode of quarterly, and we can deliberately change it and then say, okay, now we're gonna go to an annual. We can go to an annual starting in 2025.
And for me, as long as it's defendable.
Yeah, me too.
I
I
don't
don't wanna
think
get,
what'd you say?
I said, as far as I'm concerned, as long as whatever we do is defendable.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't wanna get this.
Tommy, you have something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's always been my thing too. I remember, so back in 2022, it wasn't just an increase in raw water value, let's say, that it was a complete change in the mode by which we evaluate the process, right? We didn't just notice that there was an auction of water that increased the value. Instead it was, no, we're gonna include now the original parent project amount in this new cash in lieu, right? And so you all, not we, I barely did anything, but you all went out and found how much a recent sale had valued that water at, right, the parent project water. But that recent sale wasn't from 2022 either, was it?
No, it was
Much older.
much older, yeah.
And so the most recent data that the cash in lieu was based on for 2022 was, let's say, 5 years ago or something, and it's been 2 years since then. So every it feels like every 7 years or every 8 years or 10 years or something, we get like little episodic updates, right? And so I think the question becomes, what do we do in between, right? Like, how do we value water in between, and how do we make that defensible? Because that is, I think all of us, all 5 of us have said that now. Like, we need it to be defensible to feel comfortable with making these recommendations. And the question becomes, when you only have dots on your graph that go every 10 years, the defensible part, that's entirely defensible because that was actually a sale. What do you do in between that makes it, that still satisfies our need for the defensibility of the whole thing? Right?
You know, one approach could be, and the city of Fort Collins contemplated this, was a total water rights portfolio valuation.
That you buy into their existing portfolio.
Yep, which is the buy-in method for SDCs, but it also looks at kind of a broader swath. And we could look at maybe a bigger market of water sales, not CBT, but maybe water sales of rights all along the South Platte River. And then we could have stuff that's not every 10 years, we could have a few more data points in there.
It's more robust.
Yeah, but is it germane to the St. Vrain? I don't know. We need to be careful there, we need to be smart.
And just to your point, Renee, I think that was what the city manager's office was thinking about, is that we have garnered however many acre feet, 28,000 acre feet, that we basically have that in our possession now, absent the ones that the water rights we expect to get in with land that's still annexed in. I want to make sure that everybody understands that too, that we have our overall long-term plan anticipates getting all of those water rights. And I don't want to lose that in this whole conversation either. That there's water rights out there that we still need to get. But that by paying for Chimney Hollow, we've basically garnered the storage that we need. And so can we, what I've heard from them is, can we set that's a price that we have paid, and that people are basically buying into that, instead of trying to look for these one-off sales, that there's just one data point that is now setting or changing everything. Can we say that this is what we paid, and do we modify that on an annual basis based on inflation or some other index? That the city has paid this much, but as you buy into it, obviously over time, the cost of money is going up, so we need to index that somehow. I think that was their idea of how we give predictability to what cash in lieu would be. Instead of, oh, well, there was a sale 6 months ago that now set this price, and now we're going to raise it another $20,000 per acre foot. But I think to your other point that you said earlier, is that fair to everybody else that has paid in over the last 60 years? So just
Well,
one thing to think of.
Yeah.
Are you willing to wait a couple months until we
Sure.
get into summer and see if we've got more information, if we're still struggling with it? Maybe move on then and do the adjustment. Is that,
I'm open to that,
you're
yeah.
all right with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would like us to maybe have a deadline of trying to get an adjustment made in 2024.
We'll just table the change of cash in lieu and.
Well, yeah, and we
You know,
have our next quarterly
I don't think
review.
it's gonna break anybody's heart, but let's do that.
Okay.
Because I think you make a good point. If we can't be credible with our data, I mean, I don't want to be defending something I can't defend.
And speaking of credibility, I want to say something that I don't think is happening, but does it look fair if we change it at this point, but a huge development's come in right before that? And the point of change is one of our random quarterly reviews. Did we let somebody sneak in under the wire? I'm not saying that that's what we do, but I think there's a potential perception of we're not getting it done at a set time in a set way, and stuff is getting by us, and we're not capturing full cost.
Yeah, I hear you.
So there's a little credibility there too, which is why I think the deadline is also, it improves our credibility.
I think setting something that everybody understands and is,
When it happens.
yeah, it would prevent some of this stuff coming in under.
Yeah, but the
Fire.
perception that that's what's happening.
Roger, if I could just one more comment. Chris, thank you for that perspective. That helps to hear what you're hearing and channeling to us, because that
Yeah.
isn't really that obvious, honestly. I just would point out that, and I think you're right about having some index by which to value, other than single data points every 10 years or so, or less frequently, or maybe more frequently in the future as people start to build out their portfolios and excess witty gap water, they can realize they can let go a little bit, it's, all that. But the hard part is, it's hard to tie, in my opinion, the price of water to any CPI, construction, whatever that is. It would have to be a fairly novel water rights index. And the South Platte River might be a way to look at that.
It's actually not bad. If you look at the whole South Platte River over time, it does.
Yeah, I was saying, if you
follow
bring the
some-
South Platte River, I'm just saying, if you're looking at regional elements and all that, it really hasn't held up very well, in my opinion, relative to inflationary pressures, because it doesn't reflect building or construction. I mean, it just doesn't.
Right.
It's the buyers and the sellers that set the market, and they do it for very different reasons. So, but the index idea is good, and it would make sense to think about how we could use that to replicate the increase in value of water, because it's a very unique asset and it's very local. And you can look at a basket and maybe it more closely follows the trend line. So I think that's good, that was a good comment, appreciate that.
You got something, Tom?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, we could, you know, this almost starts to look like maybe creating our own index, which, you know, would be hard to do defensively, as we've agreed upon here. And so, but like, you could potentially use those episodic sales to adjust, so we wouldn't be as nimble perhaps as doing it this way, like being able to adjust the price, our cash and loot price instantaneously or something in response to the water sales. But like if we developed, or if we decided upon some kind of percentage, for example, that, you know, every year that it'll go up by this percentage, and then those sales essentially become kind of like mechanisms by which we adjust the percentage, right? It would be a slower roll. In other words, like we wouldn't necessarily say, well, okay, we're going to adjust it to 63,000 next time that we meet or something. But instead, like we use those sales just essentially say, well, if, you know, it's increased this much in the last 10 years, let's just say that, you know, let's assume that we need to go up by that percentage every year, or some, you know, the number divided by 10, that percentage every year, whatever. And then any sales that do happen, then of course we would use that to then readjust the percentage or something. Like there's some other middle ground perhaps. We wouldn't be responding instantaneously to these changes, and so we would be leaving some money on the table, I think, when it's all said and done. But at the same time, it would be more predictable for our community, I suppose.
And maybe a little less money left on the table.
But to get to a schedule, are you comfortable with deciding that something will be effective January 1st? Is that
Or sooner.
something, pardon?
Or sooner. I would say, at least make a commitment that we're gonna make a modification by the end of the year. So whether that's effective January 1st or whenever, this is what we do it.
Currently, the code would need to be restructured for us to do that, because the way the code reads right now is that after the council approves the cash and loot fee, it changes 10 days later, right?
It's immediate because it's a resolution. But that,
Okay.
yeah, to affect this, we'd have to change the code to basically, instead of a quarterly review, we'd do a set June, July, and then.
And with an effective date of the 1st.
January
Yeah.
1st. Yeah, that part's pretty easy.
Or you retrofit whatever we decide into the current code, right? So in other words, like, you know, it's not some percentage per month or something, we just decide, you know, we just implement the change every quarter or every year or whatever. So,
No, but
or we make no changes for 3 of the quarters and we make 1 change for
I like the idea of one change the first of the year and start heading towards that direction. So, you're all right with that? We'll just leave it alone for right now, and hopefully, Wes, you can dig out some information. Go pound some heads, Wes. We're getting tired
I
of
think one of the
waiting.
things you can also do is it can be built into the recommendation that it becomes effective at a date certain. So you could take a resolution in July that says, this is the new cash and loop, and it shall be effective January 1st, 2025.
Yeah.
That's something that can be done without a code change, but if we know that that's what we're gonna start doing, then we additionally have to do a code change, which is an ordinance, and that process takes 3 to 6 months. It's part of our process.
Yeah.
Ordinances aren't quick.
Yeah.
So there's some things I think that are available to your disposal now, and then there's some other things as you guys are working through them that we can use to set forth what it'll look like in the future.
Did we come to a decision? Leave it alone for right now?
Not today.
Right.
Not today. But maybe we keep with our quarterly review for this year.
Yeah, we'll have to totally change the code.
Yeah.
And it's perfectly fine to not have change.
And would welcome a change if you guys have the data, because I don't want to undercharge.
Yeah, we'll have that data this summer. I can say that.
Okay.
Do we need to vote on the no change?
I don't think we need to do anything.
We don't need action on it, no change.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
What do you accomplish? Not
Just
much, but it's coming.
Solidify the quarterly reviewness.
Okay,
The one thing I might ask though is, as we do this, all this conversation, I've really appreciated. And I think it's important to capture what's being said. So our minutes are pretty action oriented, action minutes. General discussion followed about da-da-da. But for somebody that's reading it on the outside may not fully, pun intended, appreciate what was being discussed. The memo that Renee sent out is great that we can include. I think the more, in my mind, I would offer that the board consider giving us some direction of what you would like us to see in terms of capturing what's being discussed. So it's not just, it was generally discussed, and here's the answer. I feel like it might be helpful for everyone to hear that these conversation points. Now, whether that's a more robust minutes, or maybe it's, we tried to take what we heard and put it back into a water board communication for for next month, for you guys to understand that there's been a lot talked about here. And I feel like we might do a disservice if we just say, well, we talked about it. I feel like it would be more helpful to get it somehow captured.
In the council communication where you've got what the cash in lieu has been over the years since 1965, does it make sense to include maybe what the value for CBT is over the same time? So people can see that this isn't necessarily a huge jump versus CBT. And I think somebody mentioned, to show the population growth, just to show that this isn't unreasonable, or what's gone on over time is not unreasonable, and they have things to compare it to. I mean, you could pick out a loaf of bread, what it cost in 1965, any of those things, but, maybe have cost comparisons for a share of CBD over time, and whether, and again, it's,
I think you'll
your
find
time is
that
valuable too.
the cash in lieu up until, from the beginning up till 20, I don't know,
Yeah.
20,
Tracks.
it's gonna track really close, because
Yeah.
that's what it was based
That's
on.
what it's based on.
was
Right,
CBT.
and then, an asterisk in that year where it changed, would
Yeah.
get booted, and now we're looking at something
Right.
different.
Yeah,
The general
absolutely.
public will start to, oh, okay, I get it now.
Yeah.
well, to your point, Wes, are you looking for something from us more than what?
I was
we
looking
have?
for just if you want to have a conversation, maybe some general direction.
Yes.
You don't direct us, but you could at least give a suggestion to say that is important to capture what's being discussed. Because I'd hate to go through 6 months of discussion
Yeah.
only to have the end
No.
result. That discussion, granted, people can go back and watch the video. That's one way of capturing that we didn't have before, but the written discussion, I think, is good to have too.
Yeah, I mean, just to reframe that, I mean, I think we've all been in meetings, right, where like, you have a meeting and then the next month you have the same damn meeting and you're like, why am I
Yeah.
in this meeting again, right?
Yeah.
Because the exact same things were just rehashed over and over.
Yeah.
And so just kind of a general,
I think,
You know.
if you can do that, I think we agree with what you're saying.
Okay.
If you want to put a little more meat in it, I think that's fine.
All right, well, we'll see if I'm not necessarily saying this is the way it should be, but I'll have to talk with Heather too. I mean, I just didn't even have a conversation with her. I don't know whether the minutes are best to stay action, and then if they are, it might be that in our next water board write-up, we try to recapture the major tenets of what were discussed here, and then you guys could reaffirm that, so we have some kind of.
Yeah, I see Chris nodding. That's my preference too, Wes. I prefer not to have the minutes. Try to
Yeah,
determine what was said and what was intended to be said
yeah.
30 days later.
Yeah, and you don't want 45 pages of minutes either that's just verbatim. That's probably not, that may not be overly helpful
well, I
either.
think it's incumbent upon all of us, right, to like some point in the next 48 hours or something, write down almost kind of like the proposal or something for your, like based on the immediate discussion that we've had here today, like what's, I mean, proposal is maybe, but like some kind of like, hey, here's what I'm thinking, like about this issue. And then that's what you kind of like refresh yourself on when you come for the next meeting, and then we hit the ground running pretty well, right?
Go.
Am I allowed to talk? I never know. I took pretty good minutes. So I will report them to our staff. We'll go over them. Wes and I we'll look at them.
Yeah, that'd be
But
nice.
if you guys want to give us like a blurb of, well, you already wrote a memo, so that something like that. No, bring it on. The more information,
That's part of
the
the public
better.
record at this point, though. That's been distributed and that's part of our
Sure.
record. So that's different than the minutes. It's attached to.
Yeah.
The minutes capture the synopsis of what was said, not word by word by any stretch, in my opinion.
Exactly. Yeah. So I've got notes on what I've gleaned. I'll run it by the team. We'll put together a statement and maybe we can send it to you guys. I don't know how it works.
Yeah.
And you guys can be like, no, you misunderstood me completely, which is
No, you can get a stab at what we agreed on the timing thing. I think you kind of get the sense of, we want some regularity. Everybody wants some regularity. And I think we've been looking at it too often, and
I know Hope does a great job. You thought that, Hope. She does do a great job doing just what she said, capturing those minutes. It wouldn't be in the form of an email. We wouldn't want to have a meeting by distributing them before the next water board, but we could at least have them, I think, available to what we heard for the next meeting. And then we can maybe get into issue number 3 or issue number 4. I mean, it's gonna take us a while. I think we all can appreciate, there's a lot of things that are probably worthy of discussion.
yeah.
And they're not quick answers, some of them might be quick answers, but if we're really thoughtful about it, they're probably not really
Yeah.
quick answers.
Well, thank you, Hope. But I guess this will be continued next month.
It will, yes.
All right.
If that's okay. No, I'm fine to plow through some more, no problem in waiting till next month. But, you know, this is a 6 or 8 month conversation. We've got to get a lot of information, so, yeah.
It's good discussion.
Yeah, would a workshop be an appropriate format too? I don't know my public meeting format type stuff.
We can do workshop.
I'm not saying we have to, I'm just, something that can maybe let us speak freely, but also get.
I'll be real honest, there's so much background we gotta get, and so much
Yeah.
stuff. I don't think we'll be lucky to get it every month. So, that's,
Okay.
Yeah, not trying to.
Items, future board, I don't think there's anything in here that we need to discuss any further. Anybody got any?
just one quick thing on the items for board, just to remind the board. We have the National Guard training, goes on every year up at Button Rock. It was last week, this week, and next week. And so they do their fire training with their, they train firefighters how to work with the aerial drops. So they're pulling, they're using both Apache and large helicopters up at Button Rock. So anybody wants to go for
And
a trip up there?
that is when?
Yeah, helicopter?
You get a ride?
You don't get a ride, no.
Jump in the dipping bucket.
You get a flight.
Yeah, you did.
It's
No, it's not a good idea.
Wednesdays and Thursdays. So it's this Wednesday and this Thursday, and next Wednesday and next Thursday. So I'm not sure they'll fly this week because of the weather. In fact, I'm almost sure they won't. But they will, if the weather's good, they'll fly next Wednesday, Thursday. If you want to just go up for a short hike and take a view of them, or if you want a trip up there, we'd be happy to drive you up there and watch them. But it's pretty fascinating to watch them work.
Great. Anything else? We're adjourned.
Oh, do you?
Just real quick.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. Stan with our St. Vrain is looking to do an open space sales tax extension in November. They're trying to, well, they would like to come to the water board to get a nod of support for that, as well as the Parks and Rec Advisory Board, as well as the Sustainability Board.
Just an extension, you say?
Yeah, it would be, well, what they're looking for is, if you're familiar with the transportation tax, is to make it a permanent tax as it exists now.
Mhm.
So they would like to come to the board do a brief presentation, and again, I know that they've mentioned that they would like to get a letter of support for the extension. So if we could figure out a way to get that group in here to do that, I guess they could do it. It'd probably be better for the board, I would think, to have it scheduled rather than them to bop in and do their thing, but
You want to work that through Ken?
yeah, certainly can.
It would hard. Appreciate that
Yeah, just
presentation.
get us.
Well, anybody against it?
I do know that they've changed the language of the open space sales tax to incorporate more forest health and water riparian enhancement and preservation.
Okay, well,
Yeah, we'll schedule it.
okay.
This would be an
Just give us a
informational meeting,
call.
right?
Pardon me?
This would be informational.
Again, I think what they want,
Recommendation.
because at some point in time, they're gonna go to council to make sure, to try to get it on a November ballot.
Yeah, but would they be looking for us to recommend something to council?
Yeah, probably, or, you know, like a statement of that you would support the extension and what that might be. And
Interesting.
again, they're gonna be doing that with the Parks and Rec Advisory Board as well as the Sustainability Board.
Yeah, we can put those options on
Okay,
the agenda.
all right.
Either statement of support or recommendation.
All right, anything else? Anybody? We're adjourned.